And welcome to the ground cover session here for today's A3 Summit, Apps, Agents, and APIs, where we'll learn why traditional observability solutions are hitting the wall in the age of agents, and how ground cover delivers an AI-first observability solution built from the kernel up. And our session speaker this morning is Adam Hicks, Senior Solution Architect at Ground Cover. Adam, welcome.
Thank you very much, Vance. Always a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we're really glad to have Adam with us. He brings us a session. Observability is the operating system for Agentic AI, so truly a very topical and provocative session title. Let's learn a bit about Adam before we begin. He specializes in observability for the enterprise architecture and now expands to AI and agents. As a senior solution architect, Adam helps bring observability and support for AI workloads into Ground Cover's unified, easy-to-operate platform, which has a bring-your-own-cloud architecture. In today's session, we will learn a couple of really important topics: how traditional observability tools are under stress now in the AI era, how Ground Cover's BYOC architecture is built for AI workloads and agents, not simply an update for legacy app observability. And we'll see Ground Cover in action. We're going to see a couple of demos of tool features. A quick reminder before we begin, you can download today's slides, of course. Just click the big red button under the view screen and you'll get them right away. And you'll also notice some great blue links in this area under the view screen. Many assets and access to a free trial, even just one click away. And we love your questions. So to connect with Adam, just type in that submit a question box. So Adam, again, we're really glad to have you here. Tell us about observability is the operating system for Agentic AI.
Awesome. Thanks again, Vance. And thank you all for attending. We're going to go over Ground Cover in just a little bit of detail to help understand some of the capabilities that we're providing to enterprises today to help them capitalize on artificial intelligence, not just investments that they've made inside of their organizations and building on it and building around it, but also how to use it operationally. We've created some incredible capabilities where AI can be leveraged on top of Ground Cover to accelerate things like troubleshooting, some of the operational needs that you may have with observability, dashboard building, monitors, alerting, it just generally creating incredible velocity for things like root cause. All right, I'm going to start off with a little bit of nod to where we see some of the problem lying that we have specifically designed our solution around how to solve. If we look out there at the landscape of your traditional SaaS-based observability vendors, there's a few things that we've noticed. Most legacy tools, as we like to call them, they're charging based on ingestion volume. And it makes sense if you think about the SaaS business model. In turn, what a lot of organizations have done then to handle it is that they have started sampling. Now, in the age of AI agents, even for investments that you've made in terms of your own applications, what this means is that you can't necessarily keep the data that you might want to have. And this is risky. This is risky because you don't know necessarily what it is that you need to keep. AI agents and LLMs are non-deterministic. If we're sampling and we don't really know how to go build that full picture, then we also don't know what blind spots we have and where they may have gone wrong. What we've seen is that over 70% of enterprises are actually now running LLM-powered apps. And these could even be commercial apps. These could be custom proprietary apps that you have built. This is all a monumental challenge. And so then the AI agents that you use to make operational determinations based on that data have blind spots themselves. So it goes both ways. The AI agents that you're now thinking of, whether it's through agentic development practices or AI SREs, which is now a very popular term that we're seeing, they have these blind spots and they have challenges piecing together a sufficient contextual picture to operate effectively. What we're going to talk about is how Ground Cover solves this through a few different things. Number one, the BYOC architecture. If you haven't heard this term, it means bring your own cloud. So I want to go over how we do this, what we do, and really why this matters, the fact that we're installing into the customer's network. I also want to highlight our eBPF sensor is like a superpower for us. We get deep telemetry without any code changes and build a full contextual picture from the kernel up. Also going to talk about our MCP server and a new analytical language that we've built. We've taken the MCP protocol very, very seriously from Anthropic. It's not just a JSON REST API or even just Swagger for agents, but we can now supercharge an agentic experience interacting with your observability data through our MCP server because of these two features. And then, of course, I want to talk about our Bedrock-based agent for our AWS customers that we're now rolling out with it is built directly into the platform and highlight some of its key differentiation. So first, let's talk about this BYOC. What does it mean? We like to say your cloud, your data, no compromise. Across all hyperscalers and even in an on-premises environment, the only way ground cover operates is inside of your own network on your infrastructure. Now, for the hyperscaler-based customers, we have a SaaS-like model. This means that there is programmatic access to the hyperscaler control plane that is granted to ground cover operations. We take care of everything. We give you an ingestion endpoint to send your telemetry data. We give you easy ways to onboard, but the data all lives and resides within inside of your network. For on-premises, we have an air gap model as well that we can work with you on in the cases that needs to be put in place, and we can support that as well. Because of this model, we are not pricing based on ingestion. We price per monitored host, specifically in the cloud-native environment, so Kubernetes. And this means that you can keep as much data as you like. We don't have any limits on it. You set retention. We don't have any per volume data unit pricing at all. It also means that you're not paying for the egress of data from your network. This lives entirely inside of, say, in AWS and your VPC. It's leveraging your object storage or your S3. And because of this, we see monumental savings and huge cost reductions overall. So most of the time, less than half of what you might get from a legacy SaaS-based vendor. Now, though we have no limits on retention, this doesn't mean that there might not be some practical reasons for retaining data or placing limits on retaining of data. Similarly, for compute that you might consume, we're now on your side as a vendor. Since we're not charging you on the volume, we can give sound advice on data you should retain or durations you should retain or changes you might make to formatting of your data that make really good sense. But at the end of the day, it also means that you have a more secure posture and you have complete control over your data. Now, again, tying this all back into the age of AI, I mentioned this at the outset, but AI applications aren't alone in the fact that they're going to benefit from you being able to keep and retain more data. Sampling has been a wonderful strategy in the industry, but it means that you need to know or make some assumptions about how your data is going to look in the future coming in. When it's deterministic, that's easy to do. When it's non-deterministic, agents interacting with LLMs, that's not so easy to do. Because we reduce the price per volume so much, many of our customers choose to retain 100% of all of their data. So let's talk a little bit then about eBPF and why this makes so much of a difference as well. So in traditional APM, you may have an agent, and an agent can see from the outside looking in or can talk to specific application or code runtimes, or you have to make a decision about manual instrumentation. There are powerful libraries that many people take advantage of and include in their application code bases, but these create a significant maintenance burden, and it's a pretty slippery slope into that dreaded term of technical debt. And if you don't, then you get into a position where you're suffering from massive blind spots. eBPF, Extended Berkeley Packet Filter, is what it's called. It allows the ground cover sensor to probe kernel space from user space, so very securely, and tap into kernel capabilities so it can see how every process is interacting with the system. Every service you have, regardless of code runtime, regardless of what it's doing, it can auto-discover every single service, including LLM calls from your agents, every network interaction. More than that, it also has the ability to completely contextualize all other telemetry signals like logging and even application and runtime metrics, container or pod metrics, and system metrics, and bring them together to create a full 360-degree picture of how your applications are running inside of that environment. So from day zero, you get immediate visibility without having to make any code changes whatsoever. So there's very little lift. Pretty common that our customers are telling us they went from very limited visibility to full cluster view in zero time at all. So this makes a pretty significant impact. Now, keeping on the theme again of AI, because I think it's important, is the topic of context. Context matters to humans and what they're doing from a troubleshooting journey. And we ask our operations personnel frequently to hold a lot inside of their heads. AI, it only has as much in its head as it can store in memory, but it has to be able to do so, and it has to be able to do so programmatically. So building that context directly into the source data that it's operating on at the beginning is going to provide a much richer and more meaningful experience when AI is now reasoning on top of that data as well. So the next thing I want to highlight then is that we've really built an interface in ground cover for AI workloads to interact with. I talked a little bit about legacy APIs, JSON-based APIs, REST APIs that we have seen, or Swagger for agents. This is pretty common. The industry has overwhelmingly thought of MCP as really just a data access layer. And just like it is for humans, it is so that for an agent. So they follow the MCP spec in terms of authentication. They don't follow the MCP spec in terms of enriching or contextualizing that data. So at Ground Cover, we have followed this. Now we have some secret sauce behind the scenes in terms of how we construct the knowledge graph for telemetry data as well, put into use because we benefit from IP we've built around ClickHouse, which is one of the world's most powerful analytics databases of all. But that means that we can provide this interface and a highly contextualized layer for agents that are reasoning on top of it. And we've also sprinkled in some secret sauce with what we call GCQL, Ground Cover Query Language. What we do know from AI is that AI reasons very powerfully when it comes to code. I ask my daughters how well it does on writing essays. It's terrible, and their teachers will let us know that as well. But when it comes to writing code, we see a very different experience. It is syntactically tight, it's semantically tight, and very tightly coupled to a very specific ontology. Agents love that. So we've decided to take advantage of that fact and build this ground cover query language. I'll show you this in a demonstration in a few slides and highlight some of the aggregation capabilities that we provide to an AI agent to reason about telemetry data and why that makes such a difference. We've also done this for our AI agent, by the way. It sits on top of the ground cover MCP. But one of the things that I want to talk about too is that we've really taken this BYOC concept to heart for our customers. Now, our first pass at this is for our AWS-based customers, which make up over 50% of our existing customers today. And what we're releasing is an AI agent that runs on the customer's bedrock. So when we have access, we will deploy not just the infrastructure bits for a ground cover to run, but also enable a bedrock with a model and a guided experience that we provide over to this. This means that it is also subject to all of the governance that you bring to your organization in terms of AI usage. So external agent awesome MCP server is there for you to use if you have Blast agents, SRE agents, or you're using them in your agentic engineering programs, say in your IDE with Cursor or Windsurf or what have you. But you can also use the embedded SRE agent, then gives you proactive capabilities to then write and even do things like dashboard generation and building monitors without having to learn an esoteric query language like GCQL to make the most out of it. All right, so without further ado, I'd like to jump into a demo and we'll go through the environment a little bit, highlight an incident investigation with the AI agent. I want to showcase the MCP and then talk a little bit about GCQL and showcase what that looks like under the hood and even show you guys what it would look like to build an auto-generated dashboard. Okay. So if you've never seen ground cover before, this is our demonstration environment. We've got a number of menu items on the left, many of which I might call standard observability table stakes. Now, ground cover does have a unique twist on most, if not all of these capabilities that observability teams, SRE teams, dev teams, operators alike all love to take advantage of. Here, though, one of the things that I want to highlight for you is a workload first mentality that we have. So every application in a cloud native environment, when you deploy our eBPF sensor out there, it shows up here, and that includes all the telemetry data. This is all out of the box. Things like requests per second, errors, and even P95 of latency. The only thing that's really not out of the box in this demonstration environment is these incidents that are burning. Those are showing up because I have gone and built monitors in our monitor area. I've written queries. These could be metrics, trace, logs, events, RUM. We've got numerous different query capabilities on top of our query interface that you can write. They have the ability to be hooked up to a notification route or a workflow and then pushed out through numerous different notification endpoints. So an operations person may be coming into ground cover because they've received one such notification. And they can come in through the monitor itself and go on an investigative troubleshooting journey. But just to give you an example of one, maybe I click on Shop Service and highlight what they might see. Now, before I show you what the incident looks like, I want to highlight some of the context that this eBPF sensor is now feeding into an agentic troubleshooting workflow. This timeline, workload availability, changes, pod status, warning events, and crashes are all really important context, all the way down to the infrastructure level, where we can even get pod level insights on resource consumption and metadata, or even container consumption and metadata. And if I back out here and I look holistically at the workload, you'll see these out-of-the-box dashboarding highlighting telemetry that ground cover is gathering related to this workload in context, CPU, memory, node resources, even noisy neighbors. This extends into the network. And if we had stateful workloads, we would even have the ability to go see storage. I can jump to logs. I can also jump to APIs that the eBPF sensor is discovering for me. And from any of these, I can jump into tracing. So all of this telemetry at your behest to start helping you contextualize that troubleshooting journey as well. And if I go into live issues here, I see a few different live issues that have been highlighted on this workload. This happens to be an agentic workload. It's interacting with AWS Bedrock, OpenAPI, to name a few. And in these cases is actually erroring. And we can take a look at what one of these incidents might look at. Ground cover, because of this context layer, is able to build a contextualized picture on top of any incident. This could be events or traces or logs, and it can even build a map view of how this is affecting downstream and upstream workloads. Inside the traces, I see distributed trace waterfalls. I also get the chat experience that this request, this error-prone request, ran into, including request model, response model, and if they were available, I'd even see token usage. eBPF gives me the request payload and the response payload. It gives me the context of the logs for this trace and the context of the system for this trace at any point in time and any infrastructure events as well. Like I said, this is as powerful for you and I as it is for AI. But what we've done is we've gone ahead and built a prompt for agents. So it's very easy for me to copy this to clipboard, or I can open in Cursor at any point in time. If I just copy to clipboard, over here on the left, this is where the agent mode experience exists. And all I have to do is open up a new agent experience. It actually gives me some recommendations on what I might want because of the context of my user interface here. But I can also go ahead and just paste down the prompt that was given me that was dynamically built. Now, we do follow best practices, telling it to be an observability assistant. But we also give it context like what the issue ID is, what the severity level was, and anything else. And then we ask for root cause, and we ask for some architectural recommendations if there could be any to be made. All I have to do is hit enter and let this go reason for me. So down below, this is going to take off and it's going to follow a really powerful troubleshooting workflow. And I'm going to come back to this in just a second because I don't necessarily want to watch the agent reason. I'd really rather get the results. And I want to change gears a little bit and talk to you a little bit about the MCP server while that reasons. So the MCP server, this now supports an incredible capability inside your organization that you can deliver. Operations personnel, they're interacting with the observability tools. And I think that there is a future, by the way, in which dashboards and visuals are either not regarded well or rarely used or only relied on when needed to ad hoc and be built dynamically or just in time. But observability is a very important aspect of how applications are running in production. And this matters more, as much, if not more, to developers as it does to your SREs and your operations personnel. Where do they live? They live inside of their IDE. They live now orchestrating their agents to do development for them. Some of them are still writing code. And the code could be application code, as you see here. I have a Python-based application, or it could be infrastructure code, like my Kubernetes manifests. Inside a Cursor, Cursor makes it very easy for me to connect to an MCP server like GroundCover provides right here. And just so you know, it's as simple as a small JSON stanza. This follows an OAuth flow, so it follows all of the data access policies that the user who's using it has in question. So preventing or creating that governance layer that you might need on terms of what data they can access and what they can reason about. But now over here in my chat experience, I can provide very simple prompts like, in this case, what I was doing was I was actually building my application and I was transitioning to OpenTelemetry trace instrumentation inside of my application. And I wanted to make sure the data was showing up inside of GroundCover. So I was asking it to look at this. Tell me if there are any best practices for OTel instrumentation I might consider next that are currently missing. Now, prompts certainly get more sophisticated than this. You're doing things like spec-driven development or very advanced workflows, but it is very simple for me now to go ask a question like this. Now, the benefits are untold. I came up through an era where DevOps was a term that it still exists, but was taken to mean something very different. I remember when DevOps first hit and developers said, it sounds like you're asking me to do more work. And there were so many terms, so many different like idioms that came out of the DevOps era, including concepts like shift left, which really pertained a lot to security in its first iterations, where developers were saying, this is awesome, but what you've done is you've burdened me with more cognitive load because I have to consider the security context of my applications at the same time. And I have to context switch constantly between the code that I'm writing and the application I'm developing and what my scanning tools are telling me about what I'm missing. And then I have to iterate and I have to go back. And what I saw to the security era was that they tried to bring that context as far left into the process as they could. So find out earlier, but also how can you bring the context of the security problems that have been created into the developer experience? It's the same thing with reliability and performance. Observability has been a dashboard that people have to go to or an interface where they have to go query. What MCP gives us, which is pretty powerful, is the ability now to consider the runtime experience of my applications right from where I live. And especially now that we're seeing developers who are orchestrating agents, as I said before, as how they accomplish development, you're giving those agents more context too. It has access to all of the code and it has access to how the application is actually running in real time. And you can see it running these queries and planning next moves and reasoning much better than it may have before because it has that access. It's very easy for me to get into a very powerful flow where I'm incorporating resilience concepts earlier on, just like I would if I were thinking about security. All right. So now back in here, I want to flip and talk a little bit about what we hoped we saw and what we did see from the agentic experience. It certainly went through a lot of reasoning. I talked about GCQL before. What you will actually find is that it shows you through its chain of reasoning, the GCQL analysis that it performed in order to find the relevant data to support its workflow. And if I open this up to the right, I can actually go investigate and validate whether or not the chain of reasoning or the queries that it ran were the correct ones to be run. As I mentioned before, this is a GCQL query, and it is a very powerful analytic language that supports really modern aggregations across different data sets. But what's important to me is that it built visualizations to help me understand, but it got to the result that I wanted. It tells me the root cause. It gives me a summary. It tells me an impact. It actually tells me what the business impact is, and then it even creates recommended actions. And it did this because the prompt asked for it as well. So super powerful dynamic prompt, super powerful agentic experience. The agentic experience doesn't just stop here. As I mentioned before, MCP can be used to help augment an engineering flow or a development workflow. But when operations personnel need to visualize data, they're still going to come into this. Leadership as well is going to query. Maybe they're going to get to where natural language is the questions that they're asking, but dashboards are still extremely useful for executive leadership. They want to understand what their environment looks like, whether it's on the fly or whether it's persistently. The agent now allows me to go build those dashboards very quickly. A dashboard showing token usage for shop service over time. I can put simple queries in like this, and because ground cover is actually capturing LLM interaction data, I can get to really robust results about my AI agents and how they're interacting with in the environment. Now, rather than wait on this, I'll just go back to something like this PVC usage dashboard. I asked it to build this one before. It actually had an LLM token consumption, and I can say preview dashboard, and I can see exactly what it built. So you can see it's very powerful. I can do this with monitors as well. If I need to be alerted, we saw the incident before from shop service. If I want to go create monitors, it's easy for me to leverage the agent to go build monitors that are proactively alerting me on those, building SLOs, where I could even have it help me reason about SLIs that I have for my business as well. One of the things that I hold dearly in my heart is the democratizing access to data benefits the organization. So one of the reasons I mentioned the executives before and the visuals that are so important to them is because for a very long time in the observability world, observability data was gate kept through esoteric query languages. And it wasn't because we wanted to gatekeep access to the data, but because the query languages were hard to learn. We had specialists that could go build dashboards. One of the powerful things about AI now is that I can ask questions using natural language. So an executive stakeholder who really cares more about the outcomes. Are their applications up? Are they performing? Are you meeting SLAs that you have to downstream customers? That is more available now because they can interface directly with a large language model and an AI agent in order to achieve those same outcomes and get to these sort of visuals very quickly. AI is expensive. So this sort of dashboard becomes really, really cool because I can allow my teams to use it, but very quickly I can understand what they're using and I can understand what it's costing me and where my money is being best spent. All right, so I appreciate you following me on that demo. Hopefully you got a good feel for ground cover, some of the capabilities that we have that make us a little bit different in our environment, what incident investigation via an AI agent actually looks like and means to us, how MCP works, and what GTQL does and the difference that it can make for investigative workflows or for AI-based engineering, and also how you can do things like generate dashboards and monitors very, very quickly, leveraging AI, and it can accelerate your observability posture. I think one of the big take-home messages that I want to make sure that I leave you with too is that AI is not just for the SRE. AI is for the developer, and that observability is a very important capability to bring into context to enhance and increase the velocity and the quality of the applications that you get. So bringing observability into the SDLC is paramount, especially as we start creating more of these non-deterministic workloads. Right now is a big shift in this industry that is happening. And we think that you should consider ground cover for this. If this is where you're at, we have $60 million in total funding, Series B, April 2025. 500% plus ARR growth year over year. Gartner Magic Quadrant honorable mention, 100 plus. We're actually over 200 logos and growing very quickly, about 100 plus enterprise customers. With the capabilities we have, being able to get you to kernel level coverage, giving you data sovereignty through our BYOC and our AI native interfaces, we think that we're the choice. We'd love for you to see for yourself. Please reach out, contact me, but don't just take my word for it. You can go to play.groundcover.com, experience the interface yourself, and if you want to, we can take you on a self-guided journey for running this inside of your own environment. I appreciate your time today. Again, Adam Hicks with Ground Cover. All right, so that concludes my formal session for today. Let me turn it back to Vance and see if there's any questions.
Adam, wow, great overview of how ground cover has modernized, updated observability for the Agentic era, and who doesn't love a demo? So really great to see it in action. Thank you very much for a terrific session.
You're welcome.
Yeah, really good. And luckily for us, you left us some time. I've got a couple of questions here, both from the top level architecture point of view as well as implementation and from the ground, so to speak. So with your permission, let's turn to these questions.
Yeah, sure.
First one, Adam, you probably get this a lot when you're doing your customer briefings and the trade shows. Comment and question here says, it's great to see ground cover's updated architectures for AI and agentic observability. What are the benefits that your customers mention most from all these improvements?
The benefit that most of our customers tend to talk about is that the reduction in sampling and the fact that they can keep more of the data that they know they need to have and they need to be able to leverage for AI to reason about. One of the big challenges we see in the enterprise is that organizations are spending more on observability data alone than on infrastructure. And that's pretty astounding, especially when we consider that infrastructure has not gotten cheaper. It itself has increased. So we see an exponential relationship between observability data and growth of environments. So it feels like organizations are being penalized. What they have done to respond to this, and I trust many of you are probably in the same boat, is they sample. They stop sending all the telemetry data because they cannot afford it. They have to make decisions about what they keep. Do they keep only all the errors and they scrap the information logs, traces that aren't relevant or parts of traces that aren't relevant? Do they aggregate labels on metrics and reduce fidelity of understanding what's going on in their environment? So the BYOC, just to put it in a nutshell, means that we're not charging. It's not part of our commercial model. What you need fundamentally at the end of the day is the ability to keep and store all of your data. And that creates just a persistent challenge in the industry in how to do that safely, securely, and cost effectively. And we solve for that.
Yeah, Adam, this is truly a terrific conversation, and it really drills into the issue of that not only are we looking for tooling, but we're looking for methodologies and ways to approach and define the problem. And that kind of moves me to your demo of the incident investigation. It was really compelling and great. I got a comment or question here I think I can bring into the chat we're having. Is the incident investigation workflow and analysis something that is embedded as a reference design, or do we have to learn how to do this on our own with ground cover? Frankly, it sounds very compelling, but we're pretty new at this.
Ground cover dynamically generates a prompt for the agents. So it knows when something, you have told it to identify when something is wrong and what that something wrong is. Error rate spike, latency spike, crash loop backoffs, these sorts of technical things that happen to workloads running in our cloud native environments. But what you don't have to do is then figure out what to ask or what to suggest. We build that prompt automatically and dynamically for the agent. You do have to initiate the workflow. Otherwise, external systems, we certainly have seen numerous of our customers that have other agentic systems that they have similar guided experiences with. They can bring our prompt or they can leverage those external systems. We don't want to gatekeep access to said data through only our AI agent. We know that there's investments that have been made. We want a very open ecosystem for them to reason about. But yeah, we do bootstrap what that investigative workflow is with some utility.
Awesome. So in other words, I could be a legacy or traditional observability person or even a DevOps person, and I could on-ramp myself into becoming kind of an agentic sleuth pretty simply with ground cover.
Yes, and that is exactly why we've done what we've done from a capability standpoint, from the ease of getting started with BYOC to the ease of deploying our sensor and monitoring your systems. to the ease of building monitors very quickly with the agent, help me set up alerts, and then the ease of troubleshooting when those alerts are firing. All of it through and through. The goal for us, and if you've ever seen us at any of our live conferences, we, for all of 2025, followed a beach club theme. And the reason for that was because we were trying to make sure people understood with ground cover, we make your life easier.
Really, really great, Adam. It really does put in context in the agentic era just how crucial, not just to our IT infrastructure, but to the business, this idea of observability can be moving forward. Really terrific. As time expires, we can't let you go without having you reprise a bit of how we can learn more about ground cover, how we can maybe go hands-on or do something with our teams. It does seem like a group effort in many ways.
Yeah. Of course, our website, groundcover.com, has lots of information. We would love for you to reach out directly to us, request a demo if you would like one special in your environment. If you're interested in a proof of concept, that's a great place to start. But if you'd like to see this for yourself, our play.groundcover.com is a hands-on sandbox that you can go interact with our user interface yourself, have your teams take a look around, see what they see, if this matches up with your expectations, and go from there.
Super, super. Adam Hicks, Senior Solution Architect at Ground Cover. Thanks very much for a terrific overview, Ground Cover 101, so to speak, as well as some great demos. Really terrific learning about the new age of observability. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And to the attendees, a couple of quick notes for you. First, thanks for some terrific questions. I think you helped us peel back the onion layers on some of the really great benefits to the ground cover architecture and implementation. And a quick note, here are some assets that you can take a look at. By the way, we know that you may want to share this with your team. So here is a slide that gets you directly to the ground cover website with some other great value add and learnings. Download the slides today. All these links will be live and you can share with your teammates. So Adam, thanks again. And audience, thank you.